Admiral Senna Zalthar of the Star Collective stood motionless on the command deck of the Stellar Wisdom, her crystalline form refracting the soft ambient light of the bridge. Her attention was fixed on the holographic display showing Earth, a seemingly unremarkable planet on the outer spiral arm of what humans called the Milky Way. This was supposed to be a routine first contact mission, the kind the Collective had performed countless times over their 10,000 years of galactic stewardship. "Admiral," her sensor officer Kex chirped, multiple appendages dancing across the control interface, detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's orbital defense grid. The readings, they don't align with any known technological progression models. Senna's crystalline structure vibrated with mild irritation. Every primitive species believed their technology was special. "Proceed with standard protocol. Initiate the welcome sequence." The words died in her throat as something massive emerged from Earth's gravity well. The vessel that appeared dwarfed her diplomatic fleet. Its hull was a masterwork of dark matter containment fields and quantum-locked alloys that shouldn't have been possible for centuries according to the Collective's careful technological development guidelines. "Impossible," her science officer Vin whispered, his gelatinous form rippling with agitation. "Their power signature. They're not just containing the quantum singularity, they're actively manipulating it at the subatomic level." Red warning lights flashed across the Stellar Wisdom's bridge as their sensors struggled to comprehend the readings from the Earth vessel. Its surface rippled as weapon ports opened along its length, each housing technology that the Collective's most advanced systems couldn't properly classify. "Admiral," her tactical officer called out, "their defensive systems are activating." Senna watched in fascination as the human ship's defenses came online. These weren't the standard energy barriers the Collective had perfected over millennia, but something far more sophisticated. Space itself seemed to twist around the vessel, creating probability distortions that her targeting computers couldn't penetrate. "They're hailing us," the communications officer announced, surprise evident in their harmonic tones. "On screen," Senna ordered, trying to maintain her composure. The holographic display shifted to show the bridge of the human vessel. A human female stood at its center, wearing what appeared to be a formal military uniform, though one far more practical than the ceremonial garb favored by Collective commanders. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel Hyperion," the human announced, her voice carrying both authority and a hint of amusement. "Welcome to Earth space. I trust our defensive posture hasn't alarmed you too much." Senna's crystalline form shifted through several colors before settling on a diplomatic blue. "This is unexpected, Captain. Our records indicated your species had only achieved basic spaceflight capabilities within the last century." Captain Chen smiled, the expression somehow both warm and predatory. "Your records are correct, Admiral. We've just been very busy in that time. You see, humanity has never been particularly good at following expected development curves." As if to emphasize her point, the Hyperion executed a series of maneuvers that should have torn apart any conventionally designed vessel. The ship moved with impossible grace, its quantum drive bending physics in ways that made Senna's scientific staff emit distress harmonics. "Captain," Senna managed, her voice steady despite her growing concern, "these demonstrations, while impressive, are extremely dangerous. The Collective has spent millennia developing safe, controlled paths for technological advancement." "With all due respect, Admiral," Chen replied, "humanity didn't reach the stars by following paths others laid out for us. We prefer to make our own way." She paused, her expression growing more serious. "Now, shall we discuss the terms of Earth's relationship with the Collective? I should warn you, though, if you're expecting us to accept the same developmental restrictions you've placed on other emerging species, this is going to be a very short conversation." Senna felt her crystalline structure vibrate with a mixture of fear and fascination. In all her centuries of service, she had never encountered anything like this. The humans hadn't just broken the carefully maintained technological progression models, they had shattered them completely. "Send word to the Collective Council," she ordered her communications officer, her voice low. Tell them Tell them we're going to need a new protocol. Humanity isn't going to follow our standard procedures." She paused, watching as the Hyperion's quantum field fluctuated in patterns that shouldn't have been possible. "And tell them to hurry." Captain Chen's smile widened slightly, as if she could read Senna's thoughts. "Don't worry, Admiral. We come in peace. We're just making sure we come from a position of strength. Humanity has learned some hard lessons about the importance of that particular balance." Senna realized that the galaxy was about to change. The carefully maintained order of the collective was about to be challenged by a species that had somehow achieved in decades what should have taken millennia. And perhaps most terrifying of all, she suspected this was only the beginning of humanity's surprises. Chief Scientist Ixora Val of the Collective Science Division clutched her quantum resonance scanner as she prepared to board the Hyperion. Her crystalline form sparkled with barely contained excitement, each facet reflecting the anticipation that had kept her in a state of constant vibration since receiving this assignment. Behind her, 6 other collective scientists carried their standard array of diagnostic equipment, tools that had successfully analyzed every known spacefaring species technology for the past millennium. "Welcome to engineering," Lieutenant Maya Patil greeted them, her casual stance against a pulsing quantum conduit making several collective scientists emit distress harmonics. "Captain Chen said you want the full tour. Try not to overload your sensors when you see our quantum core." Ixora drew herself up with dignity. "I assure you, Lieutenant, we have extensive experience with quantum-based technologies. Our standardized measurement protocols." Her words cut off as they rounded the corner into the main engineering bay. The collective team stopped dead in their tracks, their various sensory organs struggling to process what they were seeing. In the center of the vast chamber, a contained singularity pulsed with impossible colors, its energy being actively shaped by fields that shouldn't exist. "That's impossible," one of Ixora's assistants whispered, their tentacles curling in distress. "You can't shape quantum probability fields like that. The mathematical models clearly show." "Oh, those old models," Patil laughed, pulling up a holographic display with a casual wave. "We threw those out years ago. Turns out the universe is a lot more flexible if you stop telling it what it can't do." Ixora activated her quantum scanner, and for the first time in her 300-year career, watched it spark and die in her hands. What just happened?" "Sorry about that," Patil said, not sounding sorry at all. "Our uncertainty field tends to play havoc with outdated tech. Here, use one of ours." She tossed Ixora a small device that seemed to bend light around it. The collective scientists huddled around the human scanner, their professional composure cracking as they studied its readings. The Hyperion wasn't just advancing technology. It was rewriting what they thought possible. These weren't just shields blocking energy. They were learning from attacks, adapting and evolving in real time. But how?" Ixora finally burst out, her professional demeanor shattering like crystal. "Our records show your species was barely achieving orbital flight a century ago. These advances should have taken millennia of careful, controlled development." Patil shrugged, tapping a few commands into her console. A holographic display sprang to life, showing the history of human space development. "Competition," she explained. "Private companies, national space agencies, independent research groups, all racing to innovate. When you've got multiple teams trying different approaches, throwing out the rulebook, failing fast and learning faster, well, this is what you get." The tour continued through the prototype bay, where each new revelation sent ripples of shock through the collective team. The humans weren't just using quantum mechanics, they were dancing with it, treating the fundamental forces of the universe like partners in an elaborate waltz rather than immutable laws to be carefully respected. "And this," Patil said, gesturing to a device that seemed to fold space around itself, "is our latest project. We're calling it the probability drive. Instead of fighting against quantum uncertainty, we're teaching it to work for us." Ixora's assistant Ven, the team's theoretical physicist, sank to the deck plating, their crystalline form dulling with shock. I spent my life perfecting standard propulsion systems, and you're telling me this is just an experiment. Hey, you okay there? Patel knelt beside Ven, genuine concern in her voice. Look, I know it's a lot to take in, but maybe this is a good thing. Think of what we could achieve together, combining your experience with our innovation. Ixora looked at the human engineer, then at the impossible technology surrounding them. Her voice was barely a whisper when she spoke. The Council, they need to know everything we thought we knew about technological development. Humanity hasn't just surpassed it, they've rendered it obsolete. That's the spirit. Patil grinned. Now want to see something really cool? We're working on a drive system that doesn't just bend space. It convinces space to bend itself. We like to say we're not breaking the laws of physics. We're just finding better lawyers to argue our case. The sound of Ixora's remaining diagnostic tools clattering to the deck echoed through engineering, followed by what could only be described as a crystalline whimper. As she watched her team struggle to process what they were seeing, she realized that the collective's carefully ordered understanding of the universe was about to change forever. Humanity hadn't just moved beyond their guidelines. They'd rewritten the rulebook entirely. And somewhere in the back of her mind, past the shock and disbelief, a small spark of excitement began to grow. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was time for the collective to learn some new tricks. The grand chamber of the collective council hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered for an emergency session. The crystalline walls, normally pulsing with calm blues and greens, flickered with agitated reds and purples that reflected the council's collective anxiety. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the center of the chamber, her dress uniform crisp, but somehow still carrying that distinctive human casualness that seemed to unnerve the collective representatives. As our scientific delegation has reported, High Counselor Zara Vex announced, her bioluminescent tentacles writhing with barely contained stress, Earth's technological development has progressed at an unprecedented rate. The question before us now is how to integrate them into the greater galactic community. Integration. Chen raised an eyebrow. With all respect, Counselor, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Earth isn't seeking integration. We're proposing an alliance of equals. The chamber erupted in multilingual protests. The Arxian delegation stormed out, their honor crystals flashing in disapproval. Several elder species began chanting ancient prayers for guidance. A young aide fainted, overwhelmed by the implications. Order. Vex's voice boomed across the chamber. Captain Chen, you must understand our concern. The collective has spent millennia carefully guiding species' technological development. We have protocols, safeguards, controlled advancement paths, which humanity has already surpassed. Chen interrupted, triggering another wave of gasps. She gestured to the holographic display, showing the Hyperion's capabilities. We achieved in decades what your protocols suggest should take centuries. Not through recklessness, but through innovation, competition, and the freedom to fail forward. The Thorian philosopher king rose, his gas cloud form swirling in agitation. And that is precisely what concerns us, Captain. Your species' rapid advancement threatens the very foundation of galactic stability. The technologies you've developed, quantum manipulation, probability drives, adaptive defense systems, they could destabilize everything we've built. Or they could help us build something better, Chen countered. Humanity has learned that the most stable structures are those that can adapt to change, not those that resist it. Ambassador Lix of the Centaurian Concordat leaned forward, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of curiosity. You speak of change, Captain, but what guarantees can Earth offer? What assurances that your rapid advancement won't lead to catastrophe? Chen smiled, activating a new holographic display. The chamber fell silent as images of Earth's history played out. Early rocket failures, spacecraft disasters, and triumphant recoveries. We offer our history, Ambassador. Every failure taught us something. Every setback made us stronger. We've learned the hard way that power without wisdom is dangerous, but wisdom without progress is stagnation. And your weapons? High Counselor Vex pressed. The destructive potential is purely defensive, Chen finished. Humanity learned long ago that the best way to prevent war is to make it too costly to consider. We call it deterrence. But more importantly, we've learned that true security comes from cooperation, not control. The chamber buzzed with quiet discussions as the collective representatives processed her words. Chen continued, her voice carrying easily through the vast space. Earth isn't asking permission to exist in your galaxy. We're offering you a chance to evolve, to combine your experience with our innovation, to see what we can achieve together when we stop being afraid of failure. And if we refuse? The question came from the shadows, where the Void Elders maintained their eternal vigil. Then we'll continue on our path, Chen replied calmly. We'll maintain diplomatic relations, engage in trade where mutually beneficial, and defend our sovereignty if necessary. But think about what we could accomplish together. Your wisdom, our creativity. Your stability, our adaptability. The galaxy isn't getting any smaller, and there are challenges out there bigger than any one civilization's protocols. High Counselor Vex's tentacles wrapped tightly around her ceremonial staff as she considered Chen's words. You're proposing a fundamental change to the order we've maintained for millennia. No, Counselor, Chen corrected gently. I'm pointing out that change is already here. The question isn't whether the galaxy will change. It's whether the collective will help shape that change or be shaped by it. Ambassador Lix's crystalline form suddenly blazed with unexpected colors. Perhaps there is wisdom in what the humans propose. Our protocols were created to prevent chaos, but have they also been preventing progress? A murmur of consideration rippled through the chamber. Chen watched as the various representatives began discussing among themselves, their body language shifting from outright rejection to cautious consideration. She knew this was just the beginning of a long diplomatic process, but the first crack in the collective's rigid worldview had appeared. And sometimes, she reflected, watching the play of emotions across the alien faces, the most important victory wasn't in winning the argument, but in getting others to question their assumptions. Humanity might have shocked the galaxy with its technological leap, but its real contribution might be something far more fundamental. The idea that progress and stability weren't opposing forces, but partners in the dance of civilization. The emergency alert cut through the tense atmosphere of the diplomatic negotiations like a plasma torch through hull plating. Captain Chen watched as the collective council chamber's serene lighting shifted to a deep, pulsing crimson. High Counselor Vex's tentacles coiled in patterns of deep distress as she received the incoming data. 3 Omega-class rifts have opened in the Centauri sector, Vex announced, her voice carrying harmonics of fear that transcended species barriers. The void storms, they're unlike anything in our records. The holographic display showed 3 massive tiers in spacetime, each pulsing with impossible energies that defied the collective's most advanced sensors. Ships caught in the storm's influence were being torn apart at the quantum level, their crews lost to the chaotic forces of uncontrolled dimensional bleeding. How long until they reach populated systems? Chen asked, already running calculations in her head. At current expansion rates, less than 48 hours, Ambassador Lix responded, their crystalline form dulled with horror. Our containment protocols, they're having no effect. Chen's eyes narrowed as she studied the data streams. Those aren't natural formations. The energy patterns are too regular, too structured. She tapped her communication badge. Chen to Hyperion. Lieutenant Patel, are you seeing this? Yes, Captain. Patel's voice came through clearly. These rifts, they're like corrupted versions of our probability drive technology. Someone's trying to weaponize quantum uncertainty itself. The chamber erupted in chaos as the implications sank in. Several representatives turned accusatory gazes toward Chen, but she was already moving, her mind racing through possibilities. High Counselor, Chen addressed Vex directly. I need immediate access to all your data on dimensional stability and void containment. Lieutenant Patel, prep the Hyperion's quantum core for full-spectrum probability manipulation. We're going to need every bit of power we can generate. Captain. Vex's voice carried both hope and hesitation. What are you proposing? Your containment protocols aren't working because you're trying to fight quantum chaos with order, Chen explained, pulling up complex mathematical models on the main display. But we might be able to turn that chaos against itself. It's like fighting fire with fire, but at the quantum level. The collective's chief scientist, Ixoraval, moved forward, her crystalline form vibrating with sudden understanding. You want to use your probability drive technology to create controlled quantum instabilities that could cancel out the rift's expansion. Exactly, Chen nodded. But we'll need more power than the Hyperion can generate alone. If we can synchronize your fleet's stability fields with our quantum manipulation systems. Impossible, one of the elder representatives interrupted. The energy requirements alone would be massive, Chen finished. But possible, especially if we stop trying to impose order and start working with the quantum chaos instead of against it. Hours later, the combined fleet of collective ships and the Hyperion held position at the edge of the void storms. Chen stood on her bridge, watching as Lieutenant Patel coordinated with collective engineers to integrate their technologies in ways neither civilization had imagined possible. The quantum harmonic interfaces are online, Patel reported. But Captain, this is basically theoretical physics we're writing on the fly. If our calculations are off by even a fraction, then we'll adjust and try again, Chen replied firmly. That's what humanity does. We learn from our failures and keep pushing forward. The next few hours were a blur of activity as human intuition and creativity combined with collective experience and precision. When the first attempt failed, they adjusted. When the second attempt nearly catastrophically destabilized one of the rifts, they learned from it. Each failure brought new understanding, new possibilities. Energy synchronization at 97%, Patel called out. The collective ships are in position, ready to initiate the probability cascade on your mark. Chen took a deep breath, looking at the faces of her crew, then at the holographic representations of the collective ship's commanders. In their eyes, she saw something new, not just respect or fear, but understanding. All ships, initiate quantum probability cascade, she ordered. Let's show the universe what we can do when we work together. The combined fleet's technology activated as one, their energy signatures merging into something entirely new. The void storms raged against their efforts, but for the first time since their appearance, they began to recede. It wasn't a clean victory. Several ships were damaged, and the strain on their systems pushed both human and collective technology to their limits. But they held. As the last rift collapsed in on itself, Chen turned to the main view screen where High Counselor Vex watched with undisguised amazement. Perhaps, Vex said slowly, her tentacles moving in patterns of deep thought. There is something to be said for your human approach after all. This crisis, it would have been catastrophic without your unique perspective. Chen smiled, though exhaustion lined her face. That's the thing about humanity, Counselor. We don't just solve problems, we learn from them. And I think today, we all learned something important about what we can achieve when we combine our strengths instead of fearing our differences. The crisis was over, but its impact would ripple through the galaxy for generations to come. In those few critical hours, humanity had demonstrated not just their technological prowess, but something far more valuable, their ability to adapt, innovate, and bring others along with them into new possibilities. 1 month after the Void Storm crisis, the Grand Chamber of the Collective Council looked markedly different. The traditional seating arrangement, which had positioned species according to their technological development level, had been reorganized into a circular pattern where all representatives sat as equals. At the center of the chamber, a new holographic display showed the combined fleet's successful containment of the void storms, a testament to what was possible when different approaches worked in harmony. High Counselor Vex stood before the assembled representatives, her tentacles moving in patterns that conveyed both certainty and humility. The events of the past month have forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our rigid adherence to established protocols, while well-intentioned, had become a limitation rather than a safeguard. Captain Chen sat among the Earth delegation, watching as the collective's leadership grappled with change. The past month had been intense. Joint research teams had already begun exploring the possibilities opened up by combining human innovation with collective experience. New technologies were emerging daily, but more importantly, new ways of thinking were taking root. The humans have shown us, Vex continued, that progress doesn't have to come at the cost of stability. Their approach to the Void Storm crisis demonstrated that adaptability and innovation, when properly guided by experience and wisdom, can achieve what neither could accomplish alone. Chief Scientist HFY stepped forward, her crystalline form now adorned with traces of human design influence, a visible symbol of the growing cooperation between their civilizations. Our joint research teams have made more progress in the past month than we had in the previous century. The humans' willingness to fail, learn, and try again has revolutionized our approach to scientific discovery. The holographic display shifted to show the new technologies being developed. Quantum shields that adapted to threats, probability drives that worked with space-time rather than against it, and communication systems that utilized quantum entanglement in ways neither civilization had imagined possible. But perhaps more valuable than any technological advancement, Ambassador Lix added, their crystalline form pulsing with enthusiasm, has been the change in how we approach problems. The humans have taught us that questions are often more valuable than answers, and that failure is not an endpoint but a stepping stone. Lieutenant Patel, now heading the Joint Technological Development Initiative, brought up a new display showing the proposed Quantum Academy, a place where human creativity and collective wisdom would combine to train the next generation of scientists and engineers. We're not just sharing technology, Patel explained, her eyes bright with excitement. We're sharing ways of thinking. The collective's experience helps us avoid repeating past mistakes, while our human perspective helps find new solutions to old problems. Chen stood, addressing the chamber. When we first emerged onto the Galactic stage, many of you saw us as a threat to stability. Our rapid advancement and unconventional methods seemed to challenge everything the collective stood for. She paused, looking around the chamber. But the Void Storm crisis proved that different approaches don't have to conflict. They can complement each other. Humanity's drive to push boundaries, combined with your accumulated wisdom, created something greater than either of us could have achieved alone. The chamber hummed with agreement as representatives from across the galaxy shared their own experiences of how the human influence had already begun changing their societies. Species that had been locked into rigid development paths for centuries were beginning to explore new possibilities, while maintaining the careful consideration that had prevented catastrophic mistakes. Therefore, High Counselor Vex announced, the Council proposes a new framework for galactic cooperation. No longer will we simply guide developing civilizations along predetermined paths. Instead, we will learn from each other, growing together, while maintaining the safeguards that experience has taught us are necessary. The vote that followed was unprecedented in collective history, unanimous approval for a complete restructuring of how galactic civilization would develop. The new framework would combine the best of both approaches, human innovation and determination tempered by collective wisdom and experience. As the session concluded, Shen found herself standing with Vex and HFY, watching the representatives file out of the chamber. You know, Chen said thoughtfully, when we first developed our quantum drive technology, we never imagined it would lead to this. We were just trying to solve a problem, to find a way to reach the stars. And in doing so, Vex replied, her tentacles moving in patterns of amusement, you helped us remember something we had forgotten. That the greatest discoveries often come not from following established paths, but from daring to forge new ones. HFY's crystalline form sparkled with excitement. The Void Storms showed us what we could achieve together, but I believe that was just the beginning. The real question is, what will we discover next? Chen smiled, looking out at the stars visible through the chamber's transparent dome. That's the best part about exploration, isn't it? We never know what we'll find until we try. We just have to be willing to take that first step into the unknown. As the three leaders discussed future possibilities, ships from both civilizations moved through space around them, their designs already showing the influence of their combined knowledge. It was a new dawn for both humanity and the collective, one that promised not just technological advancement, but a fundamental evolution in how civilizations could grow and learn together. The galaxy was changing, and for once, change wasn't something to be feared or controlled, but embraced as an opportunity for growth. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by conforming to expectations, but by showing that there was always another way forward, if you were brave enough to try.